Welcome, brave souls, to Reddit Mysteries, where the darkest, most terrifying stories from the depths of the internet come to life. Get ready for tales that will send chills down your spine and keep you asleep at night. But before we dive into today's spine-chilling tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another horrifying story. And if you love creepy, true stories that will haunt your dreams, give this video a thumbs up. Your support means the world. The Anderson family had always been the epitome of holiday cheer. Every year, they transformed their home into a festive wonderland, the air thick with the scent of pine, cinnamon, and hot chocolate. Christmas was always a time of togetherness for them, a moment to escape the pressures of life and focus on what mattered most, each other. But this year, everything changed. It began with a knock on the door just a few days before Christmas Eve. Mark Anderson, who worked long hours as an accountant, opened it to find a man standing on the doorstep. The man was dressed in a heavy black coat, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. His features were sharp, eyes hidden beneath a shadow, but his smile was unsettlingly warm, almost too wide, too genuine. "Merry Christmas," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "I've brought you a gift, a wreath to bring you prosperity and happiness in the new year." Mark looked down at the bundle in the man's hands, a wreath made of deep green branches and gold ribbons. It was beautiful, strangely so. Thank you," Mark said, his confusion evident. "But we didn't." Before he could finish, the man placed the wreath into Mark's hands, giving him no chance to refuse. "Keep it. It will bring you great fortune," the stranger insisted. His smile never wavered. "Goodbye." And with that, the man turned and walked away, disappearing down the snowy street. Mark stood there for a moment, still holding the wreath, before he shook his head and closed the door. It was bizarre, but it was Christmas, after all. The wreath was too pretty to throw away. That evening, Mark hung the wreath on the front door with his wife, Jenna, and their two children, Luke and Emma. They admired the beautiful craftsmanship, its intricate details. The red berries and golden ribbons sparkled in the Christmas lights, giving their home an extra touch of warmth. For the next few days, everything seemed fine. The family enjoyed their usual Christmas activities, decorating the tree, baking cookies, and watching old holiday movies. The wreath remained in its place, an elegant addition to the festive decor. But then, something strange began to happen. By the time Christmas Day had come and gone, the wreath had started to wither. At first, it was subtle. One of the branches drooped slightly. A few leaves turned a dull brown, and some of the berries looked a little dry. It seemed like an ordinary wreath beginning to show its age. But the next morning, the change was more pronounced. The once vibrant green had dulled to a sickly yellow, and the gold ribbons now appeared tarnished, the green fading into something dark and unsettling. The scent, once fresh and piney, had begun to change as well. The air around the wreath carried a faint, metallic smell. It was odd, like rusting metal mixed with something deeper, darker. Mark brushed it off, thinking it was just the wreath beginning to decay faster than usual. But as the days passed, the smell grew stronger, the withering more apparent. And soon, it wasn't just the wreath that felt off. Jenna began to act differently. Her patience, usually endless when it came to their children, seemed to vanish. One morning, as Luke spilled cereal on the kitchen floor, she snapped at him, her voice sharp and unrecognizable. "Why can't you ever be careful? Do you do anything right?" Luke stared at her in shock, his mouth trembling. This wasn't the mom he knew. Jenna wasn't like this. That evening, things escalated. Luke, usually a calm and collected teenager, locked himself in his room and refused to come out. When Mark finally managed to get him to open the door, his son's eyes were wild, his face flushed with anger. "I hate this place. I hate everything," Luke yelled, his fists clenched. "Why are we always stuck in this stupid house? Why do I even have to live with you people?" It was like a switch had been flipped in their family. Jenna became volatile, snapping at anyone who came near her. Emma, their youngest, once so sweet and joyful, became distant and bitter. She would sit in the corner of the living room, staring at the wreath with an intensity that unsettled Mark. Her eyes, wide and dark, seemed to glow with an unnatural energy. At night, Mark lay awake, listening to the sounds of his family arguing in the rooms around him. The atmosphere in the house had turned suffocating, and the wreath, though still hanging on the front door, felt like it was watching them. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, unable to bear it any longer, Mark decided to investigate. The wreath seemed to call to him, beckoning him to uncover its secrets. He pulled on his coat and left the house, walking into the freezing cold night. He found himself drawn to the forest behind their property, where ancient trees loomed like silent sentinels. It was here, he realized, that something was waiting for him. The forest was eerily silent as Mark ventured deeper into the woods, guided only by the dim glow of the moonlight. The wind seemed to whisper in his ears, urging him forward. Then, just when he thought he couldn't go any farther, he stumbled upon an old stone circle. The air around it was thick, charged with an energy that made his skin crawl. In the center of the circle stood an ancient tree, its bark blackened and gnarled, twisted into grotesque shapes. The ground beneath it was scorched, as if the tree itself had been struck by lightning. The smell of decay was stronger here, mingling with something darker, something ancient. Mark's heart raced as he realized the truth. This tree was the source of the wreath. The wreath had not come from a well-wisher. It was cursed. As if in response to his thoughts, a low, guttural voice echoed through the clearing. "You seek answers, but the price is steep." Mark's breath caught in his throat. The voice came from the tree itself, as though the forest was alive, watching him. "The wreath," the voice continued, "was a gift, but gifts come at a price. It feeds on your happiness, turns it into wrath. Those who possess it will suffer, and your family will be consumed by it." Mark's mind reeled. This curse, the strange man, the wreath, his family's unraveling had all been tied to the dark magic of this forest. He had to destroy it, but doing so might cost him everything. Suddenly, the rustling of footsteps broke his trance. He turned to see Jenna, Luke, and Emma emerging from the shadows. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. The wreath's influence had completely overtaken them. "We've come for—" Jenna said, her voice cold and unfamiliar. "You should have left it alone, Mark." Luke stepped forward, his expression twisted in anger. "It's too late to stop it now. The wreath has already claimed us. It's too powerful." Mark's hands trembled as he clutched the wreath tightly. The time had come to end it, to rid his family of the curse that had driven them to madness. But in that moment, the decision weighed heavy on him. He could destroy the wreath, but in doing so, he would lose them, lose his family forever. The choice was unbearable. The voice of the tree echoed once more. "To break the curse, one must sacrifice all." Mark, heart heavy with sorrow, made his choice. He raised the wreath high and with all his might hurled it into the heart of the blackened tree. The ground trembled, the air crackled with power, and a blinding flash of light engulfed the clearing. When it cleared, the family was gone. The wreath was no more. The curse was broken. But Mark was alone. As he walked back to the house, the wind whispered through the trees, a cold reminder of the price of breaking the curse. The house was empty now, the air no longer thick with the scent of decay. Yet Mark knew that the cost had been far too great. The Wreath of Wrath had taken everything and left him with nothing.